Hello, welcome back after such a long wait to chapter number 3, part B. And, I haven't been feeling good. I've been actually going through depression. It happens. And, I feel like getting back into this. And I also come up with a new project. I'm going to go live for the shits and giggles. And while I'm going live, the activity will be reading from my writings. My own mystical journey writings. And we'll see if that's fun. Ready? There's nothing like roughing it, Papa said cheerfully as he made sourdough biscuits with the last of our flour. I could spend all summer in these mountains, but we'd better start for home. Your mother will be worried, and we're a couple days overdue now. Boy, did that make me feel better. I was sure that we were lost in the mountains, and all that time Papa had been pretending to be lost to give us boys an exciting adventure. Sven must have been thinking the same thing. You mean we aren't lost? He asked. How could a person be lost in the mountains when there's running water? Papa asked as he pointed at the rain-swelled river. Water runs downhill. All we have to do is follow this river downstream, and it'll lead us out of these mountains. Then why didn't we follow the other stream? Sven asked. Well, that would have taken us out on the other side of the mountain from Aidenville, Papa answered. We followed the river downstream until we come to a waterfall. Papa said we could bypass the waterfall the same way we had bypassed the cliff, by only going down one side of the canyon. Around the waterfall was Sven and Dusty holding on to the buckboard from tipping over. Tom and I were walking behind. Papa was sitting on the seat of the buckboard. I had my head down to see where I was stepping when I heard Sven scream. I looked up, and it felt as if my chest had caved in. The strain on the lariat had become too much, and it had broken. I was stunned with horror. Papa leaped from the seat of the buckboard just a second before it turned over and went tumbling down the side of the canyon, pulling the team with it. I ran crying to Papa and threw my arms around his waist. He patted my head. Well, next time we'll take pack horses, he said calmly, as if he lost a buckboard every day of the week. Buckboard was a total wreck, with two wheels smashed so badly they couldn't possibly be fixed. Bess was standing up and shaking with fright, but Dick kept trying to stand up, only to fall down, and was screaming something awful. We made our way down the steep slope of the canyon to where the horses were. Papa unhitched Bess and had Sven tie one end of his broken lariat around her neck and take her to one side with Dusty. Then Papa knelt down and examined poor old Dick. His face was grave as he stood up. His right foreleg is broken, he said. We'll have to shoot him. Sven got his .22 rifle from the holster attached to his saddle and handed it to Papa. I watched Papa put an end of the barrel in Dick's ear and then turned my head away. I heard the sound of the shot. I turned around. Dick still seemed to be moving. Papa shot him again in the head. Then the horse lay still. Our tent was ripped in half, and our supplies were scattered all over the side of the canyon. We salvaged what we could and made a pack horse out of Bess. Papa mounted Dusty and led the pack horse. Sven and I followed close behind on foot, and Tom lagged behind again. We followed the stream downhill until afternoon of the following day. Then Papa pulled Dusty to a halt. Don't worry, boys, he shouted over his shoulder. Hold on. forgot me because they're so late. And this way I thought I could get away with recording, but they didn't forget me. I'm very grateful. What do we have today? Oh, we have one of my favorites. Meals on Wheels. Beef tips and gravy. Woo, yummy good. Hey, what is that? I have mystery side dish. Kinda looks like grits. Now I'm curious as heck. Alright. What kind of juice? Got a different kind of cabbage too. I got this purple cabbage coleslaw. That's new. There you go. Meals on Wheels is a very lovely charity. I am happy with the work. I'm thinking if I get healthy, maybe I'll volunteer some of these places that I'm benefiting from. Just Lord, let me be able to walk a couple blocks and we'll be good. Alright, back to what we're doing. Hey, life has interruptions. And here we go. Very sad that they had to shoot the horse. But you see, back in the olden days, they really couldn't splinter the horse's leg. And besides that, suppose they did splinter up, tape the horse's leg somehow, how are they going to carry the horse home? But if you want to survive, and if they were really lost terribly, you make other choices with what to do with that horse. Just saying, don't be afraid of those choices if you have to have them. They almost didn't have any food left. Anyway, never mind my shoes. Never mind what I gotta say. I'm just being weird. Should I restart? Okay. Tom lagged behind again. We followed the stream downhill until afternoon of the following day. Then Papa pulled Dusty to a halt. "Don't worry, boys," he shouted over his shoulder. "When we round that bend up ahead, you'll be able to see the mouth of the canyon." I felt cheered up enough to start whistling. My whistling stopped suddenly as we rounded the bend in the canyon. Instead of the mouth of the canyon, I saw a 1,000-foot-high wall of granite forming another blind canyon. The river ran downhill all right, just as Papa said it would, but this river went right under that 1,000-foot wall of granite, forming an underground river. Papa dismounted. He folded his arms and stared at that granite wall as if it had a lot of nerve being there. I knew we were hopelessly lost, and I began to cry. "Stop that blubbering, J.D.," Tom said. "It'll upset Papa." "I think Dad is already upset," Sven said. "We are lost for sure, and I've only about a dozen shells left for my rifle, and I doubt if Dad has any shells left for the shotgun." "Who needs shells?" Tom asked. "Let's build a lean-to for Papa first, and then set some deadfall traps." There's another survival technique. Maybe we don't have to eat the horse. Of course, you gotta make that decision quickly because horses don't last long in the summer heat. And so you gotta cook it right away. Make beef jerky out. Shh, survival tips just thrown in there, okay? Papa sat on a boulder and stared at the granite cliff as though he had stared at it long enough, if it would disappear. Us boys unsaddled Dusty and unpacked Bess. We put hobbles on them and turned them loose to graze. That would probably be like shackles so the horses can't run and so they're slowed down. "Dad has got us into a mess," Sven said, as he got the axe we had salvaged from the as he got the axe we had salvaged from the wreck. "If it was just a mess, I wouldn't care," I said, "but I think Papa got us lost in these mountains." "Crying over spilt milk won't do any good," Tom said. "We've got to make camp and make sure we have something to eat. Let's get busy." We followed Sven to the grove of aspen trees. We found 2 strong Y-shaped branches on them. Sven cut them off with the axe, and Tom cut the small branches off of them with his jackknife, and we went back to where we were going to make our campsite. With his jackknife, Tom dug 2 holes about 6 inches deep, about 10 feet apart, and we stuck the aspen poles in the holes with the Y on top and packed dirt around them. By that time, Sven had joined us with a straight branch of a tree, from which he had chopped off all the branches. Tom stripped enough bark from it to make thongs with his jackknife. Then we put the pole in the Ys on the poles. The pole in the Ys on the poles, the ground, lashed them together with bark. Excuse me, itchy. We got a piece of tent we salvaged and draped it over the pole between the 2 Ys. Then we put rocks all around the edge of the piece of the tent so the wind couldn't blow it away. Next we cut some pine branches and carried them into the tent to use for a mattress. "That'll take care of Papa," Tom said. "We can sleep in our blankets around the campfire. Now time for deadfalls." We walked along the bank of the river until we came to a game trail used by animals that come down to the river to drink at night. While Tom carved sticks for the deadfalls, Sven and I found 3 big slabs of rock, which we carried to the game trail. We waited until Tom had carved the notches in the sticks to spring the trap of the deadfall. Then I picked some wild clover along the bank of the river. Tom had used some blades of wild grass to tie the clover to the end of the stick that would trigger the deadfall. Then he set the figure 4 of the deadfall with 3 sticks together in their notches. You'll probably need a picture for this. He held the figure 4 while Sven and I carefully placed one end of the flat slabs of rock on top of it. When a rabbit or any other small game animal nibbled on the bait at the end of the bait stick, it would dislodge the notches on the 2 sticks and cause the flat rock to fall on it and kill it or stun it so that it could be under the rock in the morning. Then we returned to our campsite. Papa was still sitting on the boulder. Tom and I made a campfire. Sven went hunting and used 2 of his precious shells to kill a rabbit and 1 quail, which we had for supper. I was scared and felt like crying, and Papa sure didn't help matters after we finished eating. "I don't want to alarm you boys," he said as he puffed on his pipe, "but things look quite serious." Sven doubled up his knees and held them with his hands. "Mom surely must have told Uncle Mark to come look for us when we didn't get back on time," he said. "Where would he look?" Papa asked. "He had no idea whether we were going to except Beaver Canyon." "But he could find the tracks of the horses and the buckboard," Sven said. "Are you forgetting that cloudburst we had?" Papa said. "It certainly washed out any tracks made by the horses and the buckboard." I couldn't go back. I couldn't hold back tears any longer and began to cry. "We're gonna die," I sobbed. We're certainly not going to die," Papa said. "I read an article one time about a man who was lost in the Rocky Mountains for 5 years. He managed to live on small game, fish, pine nuts, and wild berries, until finally he was rescued by some trappers." And Papa stood up and stretched. "Well, I think it's time to go to bed now," he said. Papa went into his lean-to. We wrapped ourselves around our blankets and lay down around the fire. Papa sure didn't make me feel any better with that story of a man lost for 5 years. We were going to die in these mountains. I would never see Mama or Aunt Bertha again, or any of my friends again. Someday, some renegade Indians might find us and scalp us and torture us to death. That would perhaps be better than living the rest of our lives in this wilderness. We hadn't seen any signs of Indians. That meant only one thing. Someday, some intrepid explorer or trapper would come across our bleached bones and wonder if they were the bones of white people or Indians. We are doomed to die in this wilderness. Tom touched my shoulder. "For gosh sakes, J.D., he whispered, "stop all that bawling and get to sleep." "I can't help it," I cried softly. "We're doomed to live the rest of our lives in these mountains, like Paiute Indians, eating grasshoppers and ants and wild berries and pineapples." "Will you shut up with that doomed business?" Tom interrupted me. "You don't think for a minute that I'd let my great brain let us get lost in these mountains, did you?" I felt like laughing and crying at the same time. What a fool I had been, when I had my brother and his great brain with us. "God bless your great brain," I said, and promptly fell asleep. The next morning we found we'd caught 2 rabbits in their own deadfalls and 4 trout in our night fishing poles. We ate the trout for breakfast and saved the rabbits. Pa was very quiet. After we'd finished eating, Pa went back to the boulder and sat staring at that 1,000-foot-high granite wall, or granite cliff, as if trying to come to a decision. We had just finished washing the tin plates and knives and forks when he motioned to us. "Boys," he said, as we stood in front of him. I'd never seen his face so serious. "I think we should start building a log cabin." "Well, how are you going to build a cabin without a saw and hammer and nails and things?" Sven said. "Same way the early pioneers did," Pa answered. "By using the bark of the aspen trees to bind the logs together, and mud from the banks of the rivers to clink up the cracks between the logs. And there is a ledge of flat rock over there we could use to build a fireplace. We must prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It may be years before some friendly Indians or trappers find us." Tom shook his head. "Isn't it silly to start building a cabin when Uncle Mark will be riding in here in a few days?" he asked. "Is it possible?" Papa said. "That cloudburst washed away all our tracks." "No, it didn't," Tom said. "I knew when we turned off the logging camp road that we might get lost. I used rocks to make markers that wouldn't wash away. And I cut markers on trees no cloudburst could destroy. That was why I was lagging behind all the time. If my calculations are correct, Uncle Mark should be riding in here in about 2 or 3 days. If we just stay here." "You didn't think my great brain would let us get lost, did you, Papa?" Papa and Sven stared at Tom, bug-eyed for a moment, and then they both began to smile happily. Papa got off the boulder and patted Tom on the shoulder. "Oh, I'm proud of you, son," he said. "It was foolish of me to try to find a shortcut out of these mountains without marking a trail." Then Papa had a second thought about what he had just said. He staggered back on the boulder and sat down. He covered his face with his hands as if he were going to cry. "What's the matter with him?" Sven whispered. "I don't know," Tom answered. "Suppose we find out." Tom walked up close to Papa. "What is the matter?" he asked. "I told you we were going to be saved." Papa raised his head up. "I'll never live this down," he cried, as if being tortured. "Your mother will never forgive me for trying to take a shortcut and endangering all our lives." And I can just hear people in town bringing up the subject every time a neighbor's cow wanders away. I'll be the butt of jokes for years. Then Papa got real dramatic and held his arms out in a hopeless gesture. "That's the only answer," he cried. "I'll stay right here. Better to live out my life in this wilderness than go back and have people point me out as a town fool. You boys, go home with your Uncle Mark. I'm staying right here." Tom stared at Papa for a moment as his great brain began to click. Then he looked at Sven. "Did you see me mark that trail, Sven?" he asked. Sven looked surprised for a second, and then smiled. "No," he answered. Tom looked at me and winked. "Did you see me mark the trail, J.D.?" "Nope," I lied. "Well," Tom said with a shake of his head, "I sure don't remember marking our trail. Well, that leaves only you, Papa." The look of despair on Papa's face gave way to one of hope. He looked as though he might enjoy the comforts of home more than living like a savage in the wilderness. "Thank you, boys," he said. "Thank you from the bottom of my heart." I figured Tom would have liked it better to be thanked from the bottom of Tom's purse, but didn't say anything. We lived for 2.5 days on small game we caught in our deadfalls, fish we caught, and roasted pine nuts. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Uncle Mark rode into our camp on his white stallion, leading 2 pack horses. I was never so glad to see anybody in my life, but Papa folded his arms on his chest and looked positively angry. "What in the name of Jupiter took you so long? Yay!" he demanded. "Leaving me all this time trying to keep the spirit of my boys up." I didn't know what spirits Papa was talking about. He sure hadn't kept my spirits up with that story of the man who lost for 5 years. Uncle Mark grinned as he dismounted, and he looked at Papa. "Well, if you had just stayed in one place after you knew you were lost." He caught him, he said. "Instead of wandering up and down one blind canyon after another, I would have caught up with you a few days ago. It's a good thing you had sense enough to mark your trail, or I would have never found you." "What kind of a tenderfoot do you think I am?" Papa said, as if insulted. "You certainly don't think for a moment that I'd try to take a shortcut out of these mountains without marking my trail, do you?" Uncle Mark turned sideways so Papa couldn't see him, winked at Tom. "Of course not," he said. "But you really gave me a scare when I saw that wrecked buckboard and the dead horse. It was a good thing you didn't let anybody ride in the buckboard when you tried to bypass that waterfall. They might have been killed if you had." Papa must have forgot his wild leap from the buckboard. "I certainly wouldn't do a fool thing like that," he said. "Gosh, TD, I whispered to Tom. Papa's lying as all get out." "Would you rather have him tell a few white lies, or have everybody in Aidenville think he was a fool?" Tom asked. "But your great brain saved us and Papa's taking all the credit," I protested. "I know, and you know, and Sven knows, and Uncle Mark knows that I marked the trail." Tom said. But that is as far as it'll ever have to go. We aren't even going to tell Mama. I thought about it for a moment and knew Tom was right. It would be bad enough for everybody in Annabelle to think Papa was a fool, but letting Mama know she'd married one would certainly break her heart. What an end. No promises. I soon will be back. But I will be back. But the next thing I'm going to do is some live recordings of a live read random blog. Because what? People don't stay long, so it doesn't matter. So I have to see if my shit can catch an audience while it's happening. You know how it goes. Love you. Bye. Oops.